Broke people are stupid because they think, oh yeah, I've got an idea that I can't tell anyone about. And it's like, no, dickhead, the idea is worth zero. It's like, try and take that idea from nothing to something. That's what's valuable.
Jack Henderson is a property investor and founder helping people build wealth through real estate.
This is why you should sell your fucking house.
You're quite young, 28. What's your property portfolio worth?
35, 40 million bucks. I bought one yesterday. You know, people look at me and they go, he's young, he can do it. There must be a reason. Drug dealer, rich parents, whatever it is. That's the reason he's successful, is because he's a scammer. And I'm not. That's why I'm not successful.
He built his empire brick by brick with nothing but obsession, risk, and relentless action.
I got booted out of school when I was 15, 16 years old. Found a guy by the name of Chris Gray, and he lived the life that Jack Henderson dreamed of. You had a lot of incredible achievements over your journey, but the main one I think you're most proud of, Jack Henderson's mentor. And I bought this share in this boat. I couldn't afford it. 2 weeks later, I'm on a boat now with Chris and all these other guys. That's like an 18-year-old kid.
How important has that educational process been in your life?
That's the key. How do you expect to get anywhere faster than the average person if you don't learn from someone who's been there and done it?
But if it was just one piece of advice of that person who's just sitting there like, fuck, something's got to change.
Mediocrity is the worst. The thing that makes most people take action is
So you're quite a controversial figure in your space, right? I noticed the other night you're on television and there was, you released a social media clip or a TikTok clip that was, I guess you could say, a little bit controversial. It was about being a victim and playing a victim card and all that sort of stuff.
Even the SBS, yeah, that shit's depressing.
But what do you think it is where people mistake controversy for just intelligence or some sort of intelligent conversation?
I think controversy is seen when it's an opinion that doesn't form the same as the majority, right? Anything that's not the majority is generally controversial because it's a minority opinion. So if you look at like that SBS, I was on there. I was obviously placed on that show. It was probably something strategic by the directors. And my opinion was very different to everyone else's on there. You know, it was all around that cost of living crisis and around, housing and all this stuff that I talk a lot about. And my opinion was very different to all the people sitting there. So it was controversial. And mate, like I said, it's very depressing. Like if people live like that, I don't know if they were like acting or whatever it was, but if that's actually how people get up every day and think, I'm like, fuck, I'd hate to be in their heads. I thought my head had some noise. Like that shit is no good. But yeah, I think that's what it is. Controversial or being controversial is just having an opinion that differs from the majority.
Yeah, because I don't really see you as being highly controversial. Like what you say is highly intelligent, and I think people can learn a lot from you, especially around property and wealth creation. And how old are you now?
28.
28. What's your property portfolio worth at the moment?
I don't know, 35, 40 million bucks. I bought one yesterday.
Okay.
It went up a little bit.
So that's something that for most people, they would see that as either you're lucky, parents gave you a shit ton of money.
Yeah, apparently I got super rich parents and I inherited it all. I read it all the time.
Yeah. So there's that. There's, maybe you're lucky, you got to be dealing drugs, or there's a lot of people push away that idea of like, I can fucking do it too.
Mm.
But I see like a lot of the comments and shit like that people leave on your TikTok videos. And yeah, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that most people push away the idea of like becoming intelligent or figuring shit out? Like most people I come across, they say, I want to make more money.
Yeah.
I want to have more freedom, whether it's financially. I don't know whether financial freedom exists or not, but they want it, but they don't want to listen to someone like you.
Yeah. I guess it's interesting. So I think my content's strategic in a way, right? Like I know the more controversial in quotation marks I can be, the more noise it creates. And then the more noise a bit of content creates, the more public media that you get. And, if I can get that shit for free, which I tend to do all the time, that's a good outcome for Jack Henderson. But I think the reason that people comment lots of negative stuff is, and I know this from my own experiences, is like, generally, when you don't like someone, there's something that you see in them that you wish you had in yourself. So like, I know if I look at someone, and I still have to catch myself today, like I get jealous or I'll be like, oh, fuck that guy or whatever it is. Like when you actually sit there, or like I run a lot, so I spend a lot of time with my own thoughts. Like generally the reason you think that is because there's like an element of envy. There's an element of like, there's something in them that I wish I had in myself. And that's probably the reason, people look at me and they go, well, he's young, he can do it. There must be a reason, like you said, drug dealer, rich parents, whatever it is. and they want to give themselves the I guess okay that they're not doing it. It's like I want to make it feel like what I'm doing is okay, and the reason that he's successful is because of or he or she's doing something wrong, and it makes I guess their life seem okay. You know,
So it's like that moral high ground play.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, you know, like I have, I guess, learned how to look at everyone and go, well, like, what's the thing that, even if there's only one thing, like, what's something that I can take away? If someone's really successful at something, they're successful for a reason. So, you know, there's a lot of huge guys in the US. For example, Andy Elliott. You know Andy Elliott?
Yeah, I had him on the podcast.
Well, there you
and
go. So, like,
yeah.
he's someone who, you know, we're in like a sales business, real estate. Like, a lot of people don't like him. But I'm like, for one, you don't know him. So how can you not like him? You don't like some content you see online. But like the things that he says is true. It's like, if you're a fat, useless prick, how do you expect someone to respect you and your opinion and what you say? Because if you can't look after yourself, then how are you going to look after anything, right? There's nothing untrue about that statement. You may not want to hear it, but it's not untrue. And I think that's okay. But lots of people don't like that. That's controversial. But it's like it's true. Like that's full truth in that. So, you know, people don't like the truth often, and he talks about it. He's just a great example because it's like he's got a very unique style. He's blown up because he's authentically him. Does the whole take your shirt off thing and all. I think that's great, but people will just be like, oh, he's an idiot. But like, if you actually listen to what he says, he's got so much to teach. Tony Robbins, like all these guys, they're just like, lots of people don't like them, but if they just, even if they didn't like him, if they were just open to learning what they had to teach, they'd be a lot more successful.
Well, I mean, we spent time with Andy, and I wasn't too sure. I was like, how's he gonna come across? Like, what's his play? How's he gonna be with us? And straight away we walked in. I sort of built a relationship with one of his right-hand people, Brendan. We became sort of good mates. I actually met him at a Patrick Bet David event, and then we became mates and started training together and stuff like that. And so when I was there, Brendan comes out, meets us. I'll take you up and see Andy. The first thing, Andy was on the phone and he saw us and he's like, all right, I'll call you back. Hung up, came over, gave us both a big hug. The first thing I think came out of his mouth was he looked at me and he goes, you're jacked, I like you. And then that was it. And then he gave you a hug and he's like, you know, anything that you want while you're here, you're our guest. Like he almost treated us straight away like family, didn't he?
Great.
So,
yeah,
you know,
people
he's a really good guy.
you only know someone from face value when you look at them online, right? But who knows? It's the world. It's always been the same. You know, the majority of people, like someone in my team said something the other day. He's from South America, and I just can't. I'm trying to remember what he said, but it was like, it was a line along the lines of, you know, everyone hates the king, but they're all lining up to take the throne, or something like that. And I'm like, it's so fucking true, right? It's like everyone hates the king, but everyone would trade positions with him to be the king. Which I thought was very profound.
Ty Lopez says that, which is quite interesting that you brought up that there, because he said you don't want to be the king, you want to be the prince, because the prince has everything that the king has. It's just he doesn't have the target on his head.
Yeah.
And I thought that that's a good way of thinking about it as well.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
So how did you get into property? Like, you're quite young, you built a fairly decent portfolio. How did you start? Run me through that. What got you thinking about property?
Yeah, so I mean, it was nothing revolutionary. You know, I think when I reflect back on it now, the reason that I've become obsessed with property was not because of property, it was because of money. Like, I was obsessed with money, and it was from feeling like, even though I didn't, but feeling like I had a lack of. You know, I grew up in a normal family. Mum and dad worked hard. We weren't ultra rich, but we weren't poor. We had good lives. But when I went to school, and I only went to a public school, but my perception of rich there was like who drove a Land Cruiser, who had a house on the river. And you mentioned a professional wakeboarder before, so Nick Rapper, who's the world champion. Yep. I grew up with him; he was my best mate.
No
so they had the house on the river, they had the wakeboard boat. We had a normal house in suburbia, and we had a shit boat. You know, so I was like, oh, I really want to be rich, and I don't know. I used to lie a lot. When I was a kid, I always lied about what we had, the holidays we went on, which is funny now to think back on. You know, it's like, oh, why did I ever do that? But that's why I was just obsessed with money, and I wanted something that we didn't have. And I got booted out of school when I was 15, 16 years old. And as soon as I went into the workforce and I was earning my own money, I just felt this like liberation. I had freedom, you know, I could earn my own money, and all of a sudden I could do whatever I wanted. And it's essentially how I feel right now. You know, I left school when I was 15, and I was earning when I left school like 80 grand a year. straight out of school as a 15-year-old kid. That's like earning $8 million today. You know, it's like the things that I thought were expensive were Xboxes and Xbox games, and I could buy 5 of them every week, you know? So I was earning really good money. I was just a laborer in the construction industry. And the awesome thing about that is you're looked at not as how old you are. You're looked at as just a laborer. If you're 15 or you're 45, you get paid the same amount of money. So I did that, saved my pennies. The pennies looked after the pound. And as soon as I turned 18, mum and dad said, well, you've got this deposit. Go and buy a house and you never have to worry about it again. You know, once you've got your first house, like that's all you have to do. It wasn't go and build an investment portfolio. It was just go and buy a house. So they told me to buy where we grew up, which was like Western Sydney. And I almost did buy a house there. I made a few offers, had one accepted, pest and building inspection. That's why it fell over. And anyway, as I was going through that process, YouTubing, podcasts, all that jazz, and I found a guy by the name of Chris Gray, who was a charming, bald man from the UK, lived in Australia, and he lived the life that Jack Henderson dreamed of. You know, he lived in Darling Point, which is just down the road here. Had the had the yacht on the harbour, had the Lamborghini. Like he had everything that I wanted. I was like, whatever this guy says is gospel, and I'm going to do everything he says. So I started to go to his seminars. I started to, he had a book called Building Your Property Empire. He had this show on Sky News, and just like everything Chris Gray was like, I just consumed all of his information. And funny thing about that has now transitioned through my life. Like as soon as I become obsessed with something, like Alex Hormozy's my guy now. Everything Alex Hormozy says, does, talks about, I consume and I implement. So anyway, Chris Gray was a guy then. He helped me buy my first property. It wasn't in Wilberforce. It ended up being in Coogee because that's where he said to invest. And that was the start. And it was really because I wanted to be rich. Like that's fact. I was like, I want to have everything that I wanted to have when I grew up. Obviously, as you start to earn more money, those things become bigger and better, and they start going from boats to jets and all the rest of it. But that's what got me started, man, and then it's just compounded from there.
I find it interesting that you said Western Sydney. Now, Western Sydney is normally like, from my understanding, low socioeconomic.
Yeah. So those guys who stole my car are from.
But we've had multiple people on here now who are all Western Sydney who have all done something great.
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is of like, we grew up in sort of an environment that is conducive of either mediocrity or maybe even below mediocrity of like, you know, we're going to go steal Jack's car and all of that sort of shit, or drugs or crime and all of that, versus there's something so much better. What do you think what's the difference between the people that make it out of those environments versus those who don't?
I think it's a belief system. There's that awesome saying, which is like, if 2 kids grow up, they've got an alcoholic father, one of them grows up to be an alcoholic and one of them grows up to never touch alcohol and becomes ultra successful. And they both asked, why'd you become an alcoholic and why'd you become successful? And their reason is exactly the same, because my father, how could you expect me to become anything else? And I think that's it, right? You either grow up in that environment and the reason that you never get out of it is because of that environment. No, I grew up in Western Sydney. This is how I am at the hood, blah, blah, blah. Or you go like, the reason I fucking am rich and I've done what I wanted to do is because I grew up there and I didn't want to be like that. And I guess as I've gotten older and become a little bit more aware about the world, it's like I reckon it's harder to grow up rich than it is to grow up poor.
I would agree with that too.
I've seen lots of rich people and a lot of people live in their dad's shadow or their mum's shadow or their family's shadow because they'll never be as successful as their parents. And I reckon that's harder than growing up in a normal environment and, either not excelling or excelling, one or the other. Because you have an expectation when you grow up wealthy, you should become wealthier. James Packer, very inspiring, but it's a prime example. He was recently on public television. I can't remember what show, but he was on there and it was really sad. I remember watching it and, that's someone who grew up in the wealthiest of wealthy, had everything, had a father that was an absolute animal. And, like you grow up in a shadow of someone like that. It's hard to become your own man. So now I look back and I'm like, I am so happy I grew up the way that I did, because that's what's, I guess shaped me to who I am.
It's interesting how we get those perceptions, because I was a private coach for a few people who inherited large sums of money. One of my clients, they inherited $70 million, and they were one of 36 great grandchildren.
Oh my gosh.
So you can imagine the family wealth.
Bit to go around, huh?
Yeah. And the name of the family alone opens doors. Just everyone knows who you are. Everyone knows what you do. But because of that, it sets a standard that you can't fuck up. You can't do anything without people talking, without people knowing, and then it damages the family. their greatest fear was losing the money because they were never taught how to manage money. They were always protected. And then now they've got this huge inheritance. And this person came to me and was like, the fuck do I do?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's statistics around it. It's like, I think it's 60% of the first generation's wealth is lost by the second generation. It's like it's 90+% by the third generation, 90+% of the wealth's gone that the first generation created. That's a fact. That's not, I didn't make that up. So it's when you grow up with it, I think it's harder to keep and it's harder to get. When you grow up without it, you've got nothing to lose.
Agree.
So it's an interesting thing, and I say that all the time now. And it's interesting you say the people in the comments. It's like, oh yeah, it's easy when your parents are rich, or it's easy when blah blah blah. And it's like, no, fuckwit. It's actually harder.
Yeah.
If you have rich parents, it's not easier. It's harder. You might have the right connections, but you're naive. Like I could imagine growing up wealthy and growing up with connections, you'd think it's normal. You take it for granted. You're naive to the environment that you're growing up with. You don't really respect the dollar. Harder to make a dollar when everything's given to you. And then you grow up with that self-doubt and, I'm never going to be as good. And like, it's all internal, right? No one knows what the voices that are in their own head, and everyone has them. And I think the wealthier you are, the harder that is, from my experience.
I was having breakfast with one of our clients. We had our business mastermind on the weekend, and I was having breakfast with one of our clients, and a friend of mine walked in, and his family are worth well over $1 billion, and he's second generation. And so he's always living in his dad's shadow. And we sort of talk about it just, outside, just not around people and things like that. Because I find it extremely hard for him. Like I can see it because he works 10 times harder than everybody else because everyone says, you've got daddy's money. And he has to show everyone that it's not daddy's money. He actually works for it. And this client that I was with, I said, do you know what's interesting? He's now a high level in the company. I don't want to give away too much, but he's a high level in the company. But his dad said from a young age, you start at the bottom and you will never get a place above that unless you've earned it. So every job that he's had, he has to go through the job interview. If he's the best candidate, he gets the job. If he doesn't get shit. And so he's just worked his way up, but he works 10 times harder than everyone else because of that chip on his shoulder of it's daddy's money and you got everything.
Yeah, it's true. But so you don't get that, right? Unless you get the experience or you get exposed to it, because most people just think, oh, money solves all the problems. Like, how could you not be rich if you grow up rich?
Totally.
Money only solves money problems.
I completely agree. That's something that always comes up as well. And I say, no one ever sued a broke person. It only happens when you're rich, right? Like it just creates more fucking problems.
True, it can, for sure.
So what drives you? What drives you to, you said at first it was making money and getting rich. What drives you now? Because you've already got a decent property portfolio. You've got a couple of nice cars. You've got, I
think it's interesting now. Before you have the materialistic things, like for me, that was all I wanted to drive towards. I wanted to have the car. I wanted to buy the stuff, have the property portfolio, all that jazz. And then you get it and then you're like, oh, yeah, that's not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. The cars aren't that exciting now. We were just chatting off air and we were talking about what it's like in Miami and places like to buy. And you're like, fuck, I don't want to see another Lamborghini. I'm sick of seeing them. They're everywhere. So it's like they become a commodity. And what you actually realize when you get them is it's actually not hard to get them. Like you think $500,000 car, $1 million car is hard. But the reality is you run a business, you get a lease, all that type of shit. Like they're not hard to get. So they're very attainable. So I think now the drive for me is the things that are much harder to attain, which is like to be a skillful business person and to grow a mega business is not easy. So that's a more exciting pursuit for me than the stuff that the business will get me. Like it's so funny. Everyone wants the watches and like you see all that shit online, but it's like the only people you impress with that shit are poor people. No one who has money actually cares about that shit. And the wealthier the group of friends that I've hung around, the less I want to have any of that stuff. Like I never wear brand names. I never wear jewelry. I very rarely drive any cars. I Uber everywhere. And it's because that wealthy people are not impressed by that. Yeah, when I go to someone and I say, hey, I've run 160 Ks or I'm doing a 200-mile run in a month's time, that shit impresses them because it's like they know how unattainable that sort of stuff is. And to be able to attain that kind of thing is work. That's all that gets you there. When you hear someone do $100 million business or $1 billion business, like you can't just go out there and fluke that shit. It's hard. So I think that's the pursuit now. What drives me is like every year we've got bigger revenue goals. We've got bigger, targets. The more I learn about business, the more it excites me to go, fuck, how far can we take this? money's still fun. Don't get me wrong, but it's fun for other reasons now. It's fun because it can open doors. It can, grow your life as opposed to the shit that you have inside of it.
That's awesome. Something that you said, I'm keen to challenge you on and just see your perspective. What I've found is that if you have nice cars or nice watches or things like that, it's probably because you're a watch guy or a car guy or a boat guy or a plane guy or whatever. It's very rarely because you're trying to impress others. You know, I was with one of my old clients and a good friend of mine. He's always been into aviation.
Yeah.
So he has a helicopter, he has a plane. But we were hanging out with him in LA, and he said, "Oh, I just bought my first Ferrari." And I said, "Why'd you get that?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just getting at that age now where it's always been something in the back of my mind. I don't know if I even like it or not." And he's like, "But I just thought, fuck it, I got the money, I'll just go buy one."
Yeah.
But he's like, from a young age, all he wanted was planes and choppers. So at the moment he could afford a plane, he bought a plane.
Yeah.
But that was his thing. And I don't know, do you find that as well? It's like those sort of people, it's not about the internal or the external. It's like you just do the shit that you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think for me anyway, like I like cars and I like boats and I like planes, but I think I like the status that come with them more than them.
Yes.
I love racing, it's mad, but how often do I do it? Not very often. It's like, I'm just super truthful with myself. It's like the thing that you liked about it is you drive down the street and someone takes a photo of your car. You get out of your car and, oh, fuck, what do you do? And all that type of shit. It's the attention that it brings. But then you look at people like, I look at the people that I respect the most. You people like Warren Buffett, for example. I know his persona, obviously. I don't know him as an individual, but I respect what he's done. Would I rather run a almost $1 trillion company, or would I rather have flashy shit? And I'm like, fuck, I'd much rather be Warren Buffett and run a business like that and have the skill to be able to do what he's done as opposed to, all the other stuff.
So it's more the skill that you're impressed by.
Yeah, I think like just knowing now, being on the journey, how hard it is to do that type of shit. Like it's not easy. It's very, very, very difficult to run a business for that period of time, to constantly have growth, to to go through the day-to-day challenges, and it's fucking hard. Very, very hard. And it's impressive when you see these people grow these mega, mega businesses, like thousands and thousands of. Yeah, it's just wild. Like Harry Triggerboff, the fact that he's 92 years old, worth $25 billion, and he still gets up every day, goes to the office. Crazy. And the drive for him is I just want to be bigger and better and bigger and better constantly. You can buy anything, it's like, but he doesn't have, I don't think he has much.
That's something that I've found from studying the greats, is that their purpose really was never all the fancy shit. It was like, let's just see what we can do. Like Branson's got a different lifestyle and he's a billionaire than a Buffett, but then a Buffett does something completely different than, some of the other people who have private jets like a Cardone or, it's sort of like everyone just finds their own lane and just sits in their own fucking lane and does their own thing because they don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah. And
I don't know if you found that.
If you use Cardone as an example, what he's done is incredible. It's a $600 million company. But he puts all the stuff up about the jets and the choppers and all the rest of it. And no one with money is impressed by that. He's only impressing poor people, So I think it's funny. That's his marketplace. I get it, aspirational, Grant Cardone, but anyone that is, at a higher level than him isn't impressed by going, "Oh, have a look at my fucking G650." It's like, real people with money got 10 of those things.
Yeah.
And they're all over the globe. So yeah, I don't know. I just, as you realize that those stuff's much more attainable than what you thought it was. Now what really drives me are the things that are really unattainable and much harder to get.
You mentioned something before about education and that you would go and study other people who are more successful. How important do you think that is for most people to go and learn from other people? Because I guess, I don't know if you come across it, but we deal with a lot of business owners, and they're normally scaling business owners. They have shit tons of people problems. They don't know how to manage their cash flow. It's just essentially a clusterfuck. And the reason why they've grown a business from, I don't know, let's say fucking 80 grand a year as an employee, or 100 or 150 or whatever, to maybe their first million, they've done it just through the grind. They've worked their ass off, but now they've got 6 staff. Everything's fucking chaos. They don't know how to, it's chaos. They're stressed as shit. They're overwhelmed. But I know I get into the comment section, a lot of people I don't know why you'd have a coach. I don't know why you'd learn off of these fucking morons. I don't know why you'd read a fucking book. You just got to grind it out, and
idiots say that shit.
I agree. How important has that educational process been in your life?
That's the key. It's how do you expect to get anywhere and get anywhere faster than the average person if you don't learn from someone who's been there and done it? Everything in our life is education. You become a parent, you learn from your parents. How do you do this? How do you go to your fucking classes to learn how to do it? I'm not a dad, I don't know, but you learn shit to learn shit, right? And then when you become a dad and you've learned, you grow your kids up, they have kids and you teach them how to do X, Y, and Z. Like our whole life is learning. So, Chris was my mentor for many years. He taught me lots and lots. And then the reality is I grew a bigger business than him and a bigger portfolio than him. And I should have because I had him. He didn't have him. So, then I was like, okay, who's that next person that can take me from where I am now to the next level? And then you get that next person. And then it's like, well, once you get as much as you can out of that person, who's that next person that can take me to the next level? And I think it's much easier from my own experience when you just commit to one person or 90% one person, 10%, bit of everything. Because it's much easier to copy what someone else has done as opposed to copy lots of shit from lots of different people. Because I guess you need to resonate. And that's why I said Alex Hormozy now. I was like, I'm in his mastermind. I'm traveling to the US constantly. And he is an expert in scaling service-based businesses, which is what my business is. And I see the results from it. So I'm like, fuck, it's a no-brainer. And I'll learn everything I possibly can. And then eventually I'll get to a point where his content will no longer be as relative and what he teaches won't be as relative. And then all of a sudden it'll be someone new. So for me, it's a no-brainer, absolute no-brainer. Every person who wants to do anything better than the average punter needs to. I say it's a pay-to-play world.
I
you want to sit at the table,
agree with that.
You got to pay for the seat.
How did you develop that mindset and learn that so quick from such a young age? Like there are so many people, let's say in their 50s or whatever, and they're still trying to figure out how to run their business or to build a portfolio, and now they've realized that they've worked hard and they got fuck all and maybe a little bit of superannuation.
Yeah.
How did you just realize that it's a pay-to-play world, got to pay for shit? Like you said that you came across your mentor, was it Chris?
Yep, Chris, yep.
What was a mindset shift through that process? Like, was that something that you always had where you were really intrigued by other people's success? Or was it like
I was always
something
intrigued by
happened?
money, not success. I didn't know what success was. I just knew that people who were rich, I liked.
Yeah.
So my dad had this boss growing up. He worked at this company for 25-ish years. His name was Roger Hill. He's no longer alive now, but he was the richest person that I knew. We had a construction company called Hill Brothers, which I'm not sure how big it is, but they had hundreds of pieces of plant equipment, hundreds of employees, a big company. And my dad was essentially he was like his dad he never had. And I always loved being around him because he was rich. He was the richest person that I knew. And then, I learned a lot. I went and worked with him during the weekend, the school holidays and on weekends. And then obviously I found Chris online. And then the way that I sort of learnt and it got reinforced that paying money for things and learning what they had to teach you was a good thing was Chris, it wasn't Chris, but it was like this charity put out a charity auction for all of the CEOs and executives and founders time where you could buy 1 hour of their time. It was like the CEO of ANZ and, all these head honchos, and Chris was on there. And funny story, I thought it was like eBay. So you make your max bid and then it didn't actually go to that max bid until people bid you up there. So I bid $1,500, which for me was like more than a week's wage at that point in time after tax. And it just went straight from like $200 to $1,500. And I won this thing. So Chris said, hey, you paid a lot of money for it. Instead of just having an hour, how about we go for lunch in Woolloomooloo, actually, where we are right now at Kingsley's. And he said, I'll buy you lunch. I was like, this is awesome, So I had a day off work and traveled in. I was, 17 or 18. Yeah, probably 17 actually, because I had my P's. And after that, I sat there in awe of this guy for 2 hours. Like everything that he said, I was just mind blown. And in my head, I'm like, I'm sitting here with someone who's worth tens of millions of dollars. It's crazy at 17 years old. And then I implemented what he said and it worked. And I was like, oh, no shit. Then you do it again and it works. And you do it again and it works. And it's like, well, like anything, right? Like you train a dog, you teach a dog to sit, you give it treats and it goes, oh shit, when I sit, I get a treat. It sits again, it gets a treat. And all of a sudden that's how it learns, right? It gets rewarded for doing the action. And that's essentially what happened to me. Paid money, got the reward. And I was like, fuck, this is a no-brainer. I just keep paying money and I get rewards. So, I just joined Tony Robbins' mastermind. I think I was 130 grand Aussie or some shit. I spend a lot of money now on that stuff because I'm like, the more money you earn, the more money you spend, you get amongst these people, you learn really cool things. You get exposed to different things. It helps you think a certain way. One of my really big goals was to join YPO. I'm not sure if you heard of that before, Young Presidents Organization. And, this year I come out of EO, which was like the feeder to YPO, and I just joined YPO. I'm really excited about that because I'm going to be a very, 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 very small fish in a very big pond. So all that type of stuff is like really exciting to me because you can see, and that's the interesting thing, right? That's what I was talking before around like money and possessions. It's like there's that I can't think of the word, but you climb up the mountain and then all of a sudden you think you got to the peak of the mountain and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh, fuck, another mountain, and that's
Totally.
the thing. It's like as you start to get exposed to more money and more success and more wealth and bigger businesses, you just realize how minuscule you are and like what really matters when you get to that level. And that's what's really exciting now. And that's why I care less about the possessions and more now about like how far can I go?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you had lunch with Chris and he told you a bunch of stuff and then you went and implemented it.
Yeah.
What was it he said on there that started off that journey?
I wish
or
I had a
got things moving?
recording of all this stuff. I mean, it was nothing revolutionary that I hadn't heard on his podcast and on videos and all that type of stuff, but it's because it was there and in the flesh, and it's personalized. So, for example, would have been words to the like of, this is what you need to do, Jack. If you did blah, 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 and, over this period of time, this is what will happen. I was like, awesome. And I went and just started doing the things. And then off the back of that lunch, he invited me on a super yacht on Sydney Harbour. I'd never been on Sydney Harbour before, like a kid from Western Sydney. I was on Ghost 2 a couple of weeks later, which is Anthony Bell's boat. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, fuck, how crazy is this? Like a few weeks ago, I'm just this kid as a labourer. I bought this lunch. I've had lunch with this guy. And now I'm on a super yacht on Sydney Harbour. That was a big deal. And then it just got me more and more invested. And then ended up using his services because he had a buyer's agency. And that's what actually got me started and wanting to get into the industry. Yeah, and again, it was just a lot of reinforcing things. And then the way I got closer to him again was he owned a share in a boat. It was a Chris Craft 32 on Sydney Harbour, a few $100,000. And he said, oh, there's a share up for sale. Put it on his Facebook. And I was like, if I buy a share in this boat, I've now got a share in a boat with this guy and probably lots of people like him. So I went and got a personal loan from ANZ. I think it was 30 or 40 grand or something. And I bought this share in this boat. I couldn't afford it. But I bought. I was 18 years old, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I'm on a boat now with Chris and all these other guys. That's like an 18-year-old kid. So it was just lots of things like that just reinforced, getting exposure to this stuff makes it more normal.
It is interesting that you went through that process because I went through a similar process as well with a mentor of mine. I read his book when I was like 18 or 19 or something, and I was broke as shit living back at home with mum and dad. And I read this book and I was like, fuck, I want to meet this guy. And he was a rich lister. And then fast forward years later, I meet this guy at a personal development event and he invites me. Well, I actually flew to Gold Coast to be there and hang out with him. And he goes, we're going to this party. We rock up there at this massive mansion. I'd never walked inside of one. And, then I ended up becoming mates with this guy, the one who wrote the book and all that stuff. He was at our wedding and all of that. But it's amazing that when you're in the environment of personal development or people who want to grow, most of the time they want to help you as well. It's not like they hoard information. It's like, broke people and stupid people hoard information and want to see you fail, but for some weird reason, people who
because broke people are idiots. What they think is valuable is information and ideas, when the reality is what's valuable is execution.
100%.
Broke people are stupid because they think, oh yeah, I've got an idea that I can't tell anyone about.
Totally.
And it's like, no, dickhead. Like the idea is worth zero. It's like try and take that idea from nothing to something. That's what's valuable.
Yes.
And what people, I guess, who have made money understand is that the difference between them and the thousands of other people who have tried to do what they have done is just the execution piece. They're not as good as this person is. And that's the reality. That's what I find really interesting now. Like I catch up with, and again, this is the exposure piece, right? Like lots of my friends now are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of young rich listers. And like they will tell you everything. The issues they're having in their business, how much money they have in the bank, all that shit. Because like the reality is it doesn't actually matter. You're not going to be able to do what they do anyway, and they're not going to be able to do what you do because they realize it's like everyone's got their own little niche. And I guess that's why even like someone like Warren Buffett, like they share all the investments they make through their shareholders meetings. Like it's like global events, and it's like no one's been able to do what they do because they're not him. The information's out there. Go and do what he does. You can't do it.
I love that. Growing up, it was interesting that my family were, I guess you could say, they were sort of middle class, but not really middle, lower. My mum had me when she was 17, so they were broke as fuck when I grew up. And anyway, growing up in that environment, it's always like, don't tell people about your money. Don't talk about money. Don't tell people what you're worth. Like if people know what you're worth, then, and so there was always like this secrecy around money. But you get around rich people and it's just like, oh yeah, I lost fucking 50 grand in this. I lost 100 grand there. I made like 3 million here. They just talk about, there's no emotional attachment to money. It's just a tool that they use. I don't know, like
different belief system. That's what it is. You know, like people that have no money think that everyone's trying to get their money. It's funny with this thing in the US at the moment with Musk. Everyone's like, oh, all he's trying to do is get richer. All he's trying to do is get everyone's money. And it's like, the motherfucker's worth $400 billion. You reckon he cares about Joe and Sally's money? You're like, no, he's trying to make America a better place. You know, it's like, but these people are like so cynical of someone who literally has, you know, he's probably got some ulterior motives that have nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
He wants to learn, he wants to grow. He's like, oh, I've never been involved in politics before. This is interesting. But I guess, you know, broke and poor people don't understand that, or they think a different way because like everyone's out trying to get him.
It's because he's in the Illuminati. That's why.
Of course. Yeah. He's the Illuminati. That's right. It's just like so stupid.
Yeah.
But, you know, I get it. It's funny. Like like I was telling you before, we got broken into on the weekend and they stole my car. And then straight away, my mind went to, who the fuck's trying to target me? I'm so open online. Someone's worked out where I lived. And the reality is, it was like I made that up in my head. It was just some young punks in the street who just happened to drive past my house and walk in the back door. That's all it was. But it was like so funny that my brain went straight to like, I'm a victim. And it's like, no, it's just got broken into like thousands of other people do every single year, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, so coming back to property, you start buying property. What are the key things that you've learned to build a property portfolio? Like what are some of those key realizations and learning to get there? And are there stages like in business? We don't, I mean, we own a house and stuff like that, but I'm not a property investor. I invest in the share market and stuff like that. But are there stages like there are in business, like startup and so on? Do you go through these stages? Yeah. Are there things that people need to be aware of as they grow and scale their portfolios?
Yeah, so
like
we have
I'm
5
interested.
key stages. We have like accumulation, acceleration, incubation, consolidation, and evolution. So they're fancy words for other meanings, but essentially accumulation is you've got a little bit of money, you've generally got, you know, little to no assets, and you need to accumulate assets because you can't generate wealth if you have nothing to generate wealth with. So that's the start of every investor's journey, whether it's through shares, whether it's through property, whether it's through anything else. You need to accumulate assets. In real estate, it's when you take on debt to go and buy assets. And you start to grow your gross asset base, not your net assets, but your gross asset base, because the majority of your asset base is tied up in debt, not capital. And then eventually, you know, you'll get to a point, regardless of how much you earn, where the banks will not lend you any more money, or it'll be much harder to get money out of the banks. Then you go through this stage, which we call acceleration, which is essentially going back to your existing portfolio and adding value to that portfolio, because you don't necessarily need to take on a lot of debt or any debt to do that. You can add value through lots of different ways.
Could you run us through some of those ways?
Yeah, so through renovations, you know, from many different levels, minor renovations to very large renovations. Obviously, you need different levels of capital for each of those. Through small developments, through adding second dwellings to residential real estate, for example. Anything that's going to increase the value of an asset, both through the capital value or the yield of a property. And then the third part, which is called incubation, is actually where all of the money is made, which is essentially just a period of time where you wait and do nothing and just let the marketplace do the heavy lifting. You know, Charlie Munger says, you know, the money's not made in the buy or the sell, it's made in the wait. And most people can't do the wait because as soon as there's a little bit of money on the table, they want to take it off. So, for example, you go through, you buy your first property, you pay $1 million for it. We use round numbers. That $1 million property goes from $1 million to $1.3 million over a few years. All of a sudden, your debt remains the same on that property. So you haven't really paid much off in 3 years. You've now got $300,000 of a value increase, which in property world is called equity. You can use a portion of that equity to then go buy your next piece of real estate. And you take on more debt to be able to do that. So essentially what you're doing is anytime there's a bit of equity in a property, which is your capital, if you sell it, you reinvest it into another piece of real estate, right? So by the time you get to the incubation phase of an investing journey, it's generally when you're pretty highly leveraged because you've reinvested all your equity into more real estate. And this is the point where the portfolio value grows, but your debt level doesn't grow with it because you're not buying more real estate. You're just letting the portfolio grow over time. So you can essentially go into this phase of the journey. Let's use round numbers again. Let's say you got $5 million worth of assets and $4 million worth of debt, which means you're 80% leveraged. That portfolio over 10 years grows at 7% per annum, which is the Australian average. And it goes from being worth $5 million to $10 million. Your debt's still at 4 because you haven't paid any of that off. but you also haven't grown it with your portfolio value growing because you haven't bought any more real estate. So you can essentially see there that what has happened is your portfolio value has doubled, but your equity position has 6x. You've gone from having $1 million worth of equity between 4 and 5 to now having $6 million worth of equity. Make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So now all of a sudden you've got $6 million worth of capital, of which you can use to go and generate cash flow, because you can't generate cash flow without capital. It doesn't work. So a lot of people, when they invest, again, it's a poor person's mentality. It's like, I want to generate cash flow of every dollar I invest, which is stupid. So you need to generate capital, which is the accumulation and the incubation phase, before you can generate cash flow. And then once you've got capital, you go through consolidation, which is selling down, paying tax. Unfortunately, there's no way to avoid that without going to jail. And you need to probably clear some debt, because debt takes up a lot of your cash flow. And then with the capital that's left, you go and then we call it evolution, but it's invest in things that are more cash flow driven as opposed to growth driven. And that's what gives you your lifestyle. So it's a very simple, strategy. At every level, I guess the numbers change. If you earn $100,000 a year or you $10 million a year, it's slightly different numbers, but the actual strategy never changes. You can't generate cash flow without capital. So you start with capital and you transition into cash flow over time.
That's awesome. I think that's a great breakdown of it as well. It's essentially what we do in the share market, just shares, not property.
Yeah, that's right. And on the back end, one of our investment mandates is essentially having a holistic view. Like, residential real estate is a dumb investment when you want to generate cash flow, because even if you have no debt, it's very expensive. Like, you've got 2% minimum of expenses every year, even when you have no debt. You've got land tax, property maintenance, council rates, all that shit. So you could have a property that's worth $10 million, generating 5% as a gross yield. So you're generating $500,000 a year, but you've got $200,000 of costs coming out of that. So your net return's 3%. That's terrible. You invest that same $10 million into, a good equities portfolio that you can generate 6 or 7% fully franked, and be generating that as a net income. And you're way more liquid. So we use residential real estate as a way to generate capital, because it's very hard to compete with the capital you can generate through residential, just due to the leverage you're able to get.
Yep.
And then once you've got the capital, you start to sell out a residential, pay your capital gains tax, get 50% discount, which is pretty incredible. And then you roll it into something which is much more cash flow driven.
Why do you think that so many people are afraid of debt? And then why are so many people afraid of paying tax?
I guess people are afraid of debt, same thing, because they've grown up not knowing the difference between what good debt and bad debt is. Bad debt you should be afraid of: credit cards, personal loans, all that shit. That's not good. I mean, you're spending more than you're earning, and that's not a good thing. Good debt is when debt is tied to an asset that's increasing in value over time. So even if you're paying it, and then your money is going towards something that's increasing in value, not diminishing in value. So it's just a lack of education, a lack of financial literacy. And the second part to that question is, why are people scared of paying tax? And the same thing. They're like, they're trying to save their way to wealth. But that's why you wouldn't pay tax, right? Because you're like, if I have to give the government, that means I'll have less. It's like, well, the easiest way to not be scared of paying tax is just to make more money. Much easier.
I'm with you on that.
And company tax and capital gains tax, like if you're getting a 50% CGT, the highest tax rate you're paying is 23.5 cents. So that'd be 47 cents minus 50%, you're paying 23.5 cents. And in a company tax rate environment, you're paying 25 cents, which I don't think is that bad. Like, the government's taking 25%, you're keeping 75%. I can near guarantee that if you got diagnosed with cancer tomorrow and you had to go and use a public system and get, all the shit for free, you think it's a pretty good use of your money. And the only reason I say that is my partner just went through that last year. I got diagnosed with breast cancer. Mate, we walked into the, what's it called here called? Anyway, like specialist hospital. Didn't pay for a thing other than things that we chose to pay for. Got incredible treatment for free. You reckon that's a pretty good use of your tax-paying money?
Yeah.
I do. But when you don't go through that stuff, you're like, oh, why the fuck would I pay tax? So again, it's like a lack of knowledge and I guess exposure to those things that your tax money goes to.
It's all the bros out there that are like, I'm doing cashies on the side, and then they go to the bank and they go, the fucking bank won't lend me money for my fucking loan.
And mate, we see it with business owners, even business owners who run good businesses, and then you look at their P&L and you're like, you did $8 million in revenue and you made $160,000 in net profit. Like, what are you doing with your cash? Oh, mate, writing it down, bought this. I'm like, you idiot. They're actually costing themselves money. They don't realize, like, every dollar that you show as profit, you can go and borrow 6 from the bank. That's a good thing, right? Like, you show less money, you can borrow less money, which means you can make less money. But it's that finite, the mentality of there's a finite amount of resource to go around. So, You look at the wealthiest people in the world and they pay the most amount of tax. They minimize their tax legally, no doubt about it, but they still pay a shitload of it.
I love that conversation as well. The fucking rich only pay, 7%. I'm like, 7% of $1 billion is a lot more than you're paying, motherfucker. Shut up.
Yeah, and like, again, it's like 7% income or company tax. Like, I'm not sure if you pay payroll tax, but I got to pay tax to the government to employ people. It's like, I pay that tax. I pay PAYG tax. I pay company tax. I pay capital gains tax. Like, you just pay tax. It's part of living. I'd rather pay tax than not pay tax, I can assure you, because when in countries countries that you don't pay tax, there's other issues outside of not paying tax.
I agree. It's spot on. Social media, you're on there a lot. You get a lot of attention on social media. What was your strategy originally behind social media? Because you're predominantly on TikTok from what I've seen.
Instagram and TikTok. I got a way bigger following on Instagram than TikTok.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was, that's where I came across you, and I've been following you for years on TikTok. But you've got this huge social media following. What was the strategy behind it? How did you get started?
Gary V.
No
Same
kidding.
thing, become obsessed with someone. I, for some reason, found his content online, resonated with it. His content was all about being fully accountable to your own actions. All the success in your life is your fault, and all the bad things in your life is your fault. So I love that. He always said, social media. As soon as you start a business or do anything, create content. So my first employee, as soon as I got into real estate, wasn't an EA. It was a videographer. So that's what I did. And I just committed to it. And for like 3, maybe 4 years, no one cared about Jack Henderson. I was just an idiot, And then it's only recently that it's really started to compound. And, now it's funny, like it's that hockey stick metaphor where nothing happens, all of a sudden. Then it's the thing that separates your business from someone else. So, everything's going to become commoditized very, 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 very soon. AI is crazy. I don't know if you've been toying around with it, but we've just brought on AI callers, outbound callers.
Yep.
It costs about 1/5 of what our team costs, dials the same amount of people, and no one knows it's AI. So like every single role will be eventually commoditized, and brand will be the only thing that separates good from bad. And I think personal brand is becoming more relevant now than company brand. Like that's what I think.
I agree.
I buy from people, not from brands. And even the biggest fashion labels, you're generally buying that brand again because of the status it brings or the people that it's tied to.
Yeah.
So that was the reason behind it. And then again, you don't realize the thing until you've done it. Like so you start building a brand, then you go, oh, okay, well, like someone's coming to me that charge more, okay, and then you learn all these things, and all of a sudden you're like, fuck, I'm so glad I did this. Because if you start now, as opposed to 6 years ago when I started, or 7 years ago, very, very different. And again, you just talk about your niche and people start to follow you, and then you're just in the mix. And you have people that absolutely love you, diehards. And again, like our fees in comparison to everyone else in our industry are minimum 3 times more. And most of them charge much less. So we're much higher than them as well. And the only reason we can do that, we get incredible results, but lots of people get incredible results because I'm Jack Henderson and no one else is Jack Henderson. But that's the thing. And you don't realize that until you're there, right?
Yeah.
Same as the people like Tony Robbins and Alex or Mojo who I've mentioned. It's like the only reason you pay these people so much money is not because they're incredible. There's lots of incredible people. It's because they're them.
Yes.
So that's what I've realized now.
How do you think through that? Because you're a very logical thinker from, having this conversation. You have a very logical sequencing of thought process.
Yeah.
You're running a business, taking time out of your business to create content. You don't see an immediate gain. It's a long-term play. How do you then go, I've got heaps of shit to do today, but I still need to create content? What's the thought process behind that?
So it's always just been a part of my day. So my first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I train. So I run. I go to a cafe every single morning at like 6:30, and then I sit there, and the first thing I do is I do my LinkedIn posts. I don't post all my social stuff now on Instagram and that, but I used to. That was my first thing I did every day. Post. Gary V taught me the thing, document, don't create. So I was like, what can I talk about? Oh yeah, that happened yesterday. Oh, this shit happened. Some things did well, some things didn't, but I just got on with my day. That was it. Content done. Bang. On to the next thing. And then I'd try and post during the day, and then I'd always post at night. So it was 3 times a day on 3 platforms. And again, no one listened and liked my stuff at the start. Everyone was like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And the only time it got shared is when people were sharing it to other people to tell them I was an idiot. And, then, like I said, first employee was a videographer. So then he was recording me as I was going about doing my day, having meetings, talking about things, buying property, blah, blah, blah. And he would create the content for me, so I didn't have to think about it. And then, you know, you start to build a team, and, you know, now inside of my office, I've got a studio, and everything's content.
Yep.
So it's like everything. Every meeting I have is recorded. That's content.
Where's your media guy now?
Oh, they're back at the office. I shot a big thing before I got here, and then I said, you edit all this shit. But I got a media team now at 4. So, and that's all they do is my stuff, nonstop. And it's just become a part of my day. And now I think about everything as how can I use my time just the same as I think about real estate. It's like, how can I be as effective and get as much leverage as I can out of every time. So if I spend, you know, I shot a YouTube video before I got here. It took me 35, 40 minutes. Someone prepped all my slides for me. And, you know, if that gets seen by 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people, it's a pretty good use of my time. It would take me a significant amount of time to talk to 300,000 people. And that's what happens when you get it, obviously, the momentum, as you would know.
Yeah.
But now I post, you know, I think 4 to 6 posts a day. Some get 20, 30, 40,000 views. Some get 3 million views. But you look at the average and it's like, I'm in front of people. Everywhere you go, you see Jack Henderson's face on the internet if you're searching for that thing. And the cool thing about all the channels now, all the platforms now, is that it's not who you follow, it's what you're interested in.
Yeah.
So like in property, people are interested in property for a very short period of time when they're buying. Then they get out of it. So the cool thing is my following continues to grow because people are interested in property for a period of time and they move on. And then guess what? The next batch of people who are interested in property comes through. And the content just hammers those people. And now I spend a stupid amount of money on ads and acquiring followers and all the rest of it through, you know, boosting posts and getting them to follow me. So now it's much more strategic and we've got outbound setting teams and all that stuff. But it started by just creating first bit of content and then it compounds off the back of that.
I struggle with that with so many business owners because a lot of them, especially when they're tradies and so on, they come in and they go, yeah, but I'm just a plumber. And I'm like, fucking film it and talk about it. And they're like, then you see them and they film like a drain. And I'm like, who are you filming it for?
Yeah.
Oh, but it's a drain. I'm like, film you guys having some banter. Yeah, but I don't want to ruin the brand. And I'm like, fuck.
You don't have a brand. No one knows who you are.
Yeah, exactly. They think that everyone's watching them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I said it in the event that we had on the weekend. And I said, look, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to post content. You're going to get 3 likes and it's going to be your mum, your brother and your sister. Don't worry about it. Just fucking keep posting.
I actually think that the hardest people because, you know, I care less about what other people think about me and a lot about what my family thinks about me. So I actually find it harder when they see content where I say things and I'm a little bit, you know, outlandish or whatever. I'm like, fuck, you know, mum likes that post or she comments on it. I know she gets annoyed at some of the stuff I say and where I'm like, if someone comments, like, dude, I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments every single week now. And, you know, 50% are great and 50% are terrible.
Yeah.
But like, same thing we were talking about before. It's like I wouldn't trade places with any of these people. There's a reason they're commenting on my post and I'm not commenting on theirs. But mate, content for me is the only thing that will separate any business in the future. You either have a brand or you don't, because everything's commoditized. You're a coach, you're commoditized. You're a buyer's agent, you're commoditized. Like AI is going to take elements of everything. And really it's like the bottom 80%, I think, will be evaporated into nothing. And the top 20% are the ones that will probably, you know, thrive. And the top 1% will be the ones that thrive and can charge stupid amounts of money for things. So I'm all in on that belief.
I'm with you on that. We fucked up because we were doing well on content and socials like in 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
And we were going pretty hard. And then, you know, we started getting a massive influx of clientele and then we backed off a little bit because I was too busy doing other shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, I wish I'd just not been an idiot and kept going. And so now, you know, we've just gone all in. We have our content team and everything, hence why the podcast has come back up again for that exact reason. I'm exactly with you, you know, in that as well.
I think it's a necessity now. And lots of people do it as well. So I think the hard thing with content now is being authentic and being different from everyone else out there. Because there are a lot of people creating content. If you're a plumber, there's a lot of plumbers creating content. If you're a buyer's agent, there's a lot of buyer's agents creating content. If you're anything, there's a lot of people doing it. A lot more now than what there were. There's still not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but a lot more than there were. So there's only a certain amount of eyeballs online and you need to, you know, I guess be the type of person that a certain niche will resonate with. So lots of people dislike Jack Henderson, dislike my strategy, dislike what I talk about, and that's great because it means there's a certain niche of people that'll absolutely love it, and they're the people who use you anyway. So that's what I really focus on now is like, what's my messaging? Who's my ideal customer? Who am I talking to in all of my pieces of content? And who are the people who are going to pay me a lot of money? And that's all I talk to.
That's awesome. How do you deal with a lot of the bullshit that goes online. So, you know, I was just talking with Josh before about Reddit. Like it's where the pond scum go to communicate, is just Reddit.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a lot of the shit on TikTok? Because TikTok is almost like you're either a creator or you're normally a scumbag in the comments. It's like there's very rarely like an in-between of those two. I mean, there is a small pocket of people who just actually like your shit and say, you know, this is great. Like, I love it, appreciate it. But a lot of the comments are just people who argue over the most insignificant. I mean, they're just arguing with each other on bullshit.
People. I want more and more people to argue in my comments because TikTok thinks your content's great. So they're like, push it out to more people. So they argue. Like I did a React post the other day to it's like this company that interviews people, asking them how much savings they have on the street.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
it's got like 2 million views, and the video's not good. It's just that I think I said something super controversial in there, which was like, oh God, it was something, and I just got people so riled up. And there's just people in the comments still now that video is growing. It was posted like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they're just hammering each other. And I was like, keep going, keep going. It's just more and more people see it, and it's for free. It's crazy. So how I don't care about what anyone says online is I'm like, just all you have to do is spend 10 minutes, click on all their profile photos and look at them. Look at all of them. And you're like, you're fat. You live at home still. You're an idiot. Like, it's just like you wouldn't actually listen to any of them in real life. So that's no different online. It's like people have an opinion online and they have a place to voice it. But if you saw that person in the street, you'd be like, you are a clown. And you would walk the other way. And that's all you have to think. And I got hammered on national television, so that was pretty intense. I got a story done on me by ABC Four Corners, and they absolutely smashed me, and it smashed my business too. So you know, there's good and bad to content creation, because the more people who know who you are, the more people who want to take you down, and the more squeaky clean everything needs to be, because there's a lot of people looking at you, which I learnt. But again, it was good.
So Four Corners did a hit piece on you?
Well, they did a hit piece on the real estate industry. Jack Henderson's got a big name in the real estate industry. So Jack Henderson was good for their story, right? Because if people knew I was going to be on it, they'd watch, which is what happened. And yeah, it cost me many, many millions of dollars. And it was a fucking 18 months of hell, and they did a great job. But since that happened, I made this little goal, and most of my goals come true. I'm going to buy the Newcastle Herald. That's one of the things I'm going to do. I sack all the motherfuckers who work there. So that's one of my goals. I can assure you it'll happen. And the ABC, like, they hammered me, and it got picked up by Apple News. It was fucking everywhere, this story. And if you look at comments now, there's people still commenting about it. But one of the things I realized, and it also reinforced the brand piece, it's like at that point in time, the ABC had more credibility than Jack Henderson had. So their word was stronger than mine. I didn't even comment on it. I was like, regardless of what I say, all you're going to do is give other people a platform to talk. But eventually, my brand can be bigger than the ABC's brand. And I can tell you, personal brands are growing faster than company brands are. Like, ABC's reputation would be diminishing over time, and most mainstream medias would be, right, because of all the misinformation. And that your personal brand can grow at a faster rate than what they can. So that was another thing where I'm like, okay, well, next time this happens, because there will be a next time, there's no doubt about it. I need to make sure that my brand is bigger than the person trying to smash me.
It's interesting that journalism was, I remember growing up, I mean, I was born in the 80s. In the 80s and early 90s, journalism was like something amazing. You know, they'd go out there and they'd take down these huge companies that are, you know, exploiting child labor, doing really dodgy shit. And you're like, fuck, this is amazing journalism. Over the years, though, journalists have become almost like, I've noticed lately that they're more worried about what's happening on TikTok, and they would rather report about Jack Henderson from TikTok and the TikTok video you posted to just try and stay relevant. 100%,
because that's the only way they can stay relevant, right? Like it's piggybacking off the back of something that's already viral. So like I did a few posts recently that got picked up by all the media channels. You know, it was like one, if you own your own home and pay your mortgage off, you're an idiot.
Yep.
And I knew that would blow up. We got like 8 million views on Facebook, and then all the media channels picked it up. And all they wanted to do was, tell us about that. They're trying, like, you know, but they're just trying to get bunny hop off your, or piggyback off your virality. And that was the reason I got on SBS, because it was like my views on cost of living are different from everyone else's. And that was the first time I'd been on actual television, like a stage production. And it wasn't live, it was like, you know, prepped. And what it made me realize is that kind of television is so, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's just fake.
Yep.
It's like if they didn't get the answer they wanted, to like, but no, what I'm looking for is like something like this. Is that okay for you to say that? And like people are nervous, right? Like, oh yeah, that's fine. And they say something, And then at the end, when we've like everyone had danced through all their shit after 2 hours, then they go back and she re-recorded the questions and how she asked them. So you can imagine like the camera pans to what she's saying and like the way that they ask the question, and they put all the music behind it. And I'm like, it is the biggest crock of shit I've ever seen. I literally finishing, I threw my thing. I was like, see, I'm going. It was garbage, absolute garbage. And that's what people listen to.
It's interesting that you're at that level now where the media are coming after you for that reason. I remember interviewing Toby Pierce. He's a friend of mine.
Legend.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing Toby, and I was really interesting because he had a ton of shit came out about him. You know, he had his Lambo that he parks in a disabled car park. Now, it was in the building that he fucking owns. Someone took a photo of it, put it up online, and then all of a sudden, motherfucker would scratch his car. I'd fucking kick in the windows. It's his own car park like he was in at work on a Sunday or something working, just parked right at the front doors. It's his own car park. No one else is there. He owns the fucking building.
Yeah.
But this whole thing blows up viral. And I said, Toby, how did you deal with it? And he goes, mate, you use the media on the way up. They ride you on the way down. Like, it's the way that it is. It's just the game.
Sure. But it's changing. It's changing a lot. Like, the media are nowhere near as powerful as they used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're only powerful with a certain niche. Like, when was the last time you read a newspaper?
Oh, I couldn't even.
That's right. So the people who read newspapers are dying.
I think the last time I used a newspaper was to light a fire with.
That's right. Yeah, I'm always looking for the paper to try and light something. But the people who communicate through there and get their information through there are dying. Yeah. You know, like they're 80 years old now, 70 years old, 60 years old now. Their opinion matters less and less and less, and they're not my clients, so I don't care. So I think the important thing is being where your clients are. And I would near say that my account on all the social channels gets more engagement than nearly all of these media channels. So the more that grows, I think that's I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah.
You know, like usually like these media outlets have got more money, they've got more resources, they've got more reach. But the reality is Channel 9 is no longer as powerful because who the fuck watches Channel 9? No one. They watch Netflix. And they choose what they want to watch when they want to watch it. And Netflix doesn't talk about garbage, you know?
Yeah.
Same as newspapers. No one reads a newspaper anymore. So, and people who do, no one cares about. So I think it's interesting over the next sort of 5, 10, 15 years that the channels themselves are powerful. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whoever else is going to be the future channel. But without people on those channels, the channels aren't worth squat. So if you've got a really big brand on those channels and people are going to the channels for information, there's a world in which the brands that publicize shit no longer exist because no one cares.
It's almost like a signal of success when you've been hit by the media.
Yeah.
And a couple of, it was probably maybe last year or maybe the year before, one of my other past clients, he owns a Hollywood sign, so the branding rights for it, Shane. And there was this hit piece done on him.
Sick business.
Oh, he does billions of dollars in branding deals per year.
So cool.
He's a very interesting guy. So he's the guy that has the aviation stuff. So he flies around a helicopter and everything like that.
You need to check out the Hollywood sign up close and personal.
Yeah, he's a cool cat. And but when I remember this hit piece came out about about him in the media, and I was like, fuck. And there's all these people in the comments just reaming him, and he's from SA, and nothing happens in SA. So anything small that sort of changes the norm or whatever, it's fucking front page. Anyway, so I see it, and I thought, you know what, I'll give him a call and just check in on him, make sure he's all okay and whatever. I ring him up. He's like, yeah, no, man, I'm just having a cigar, just sitting out the front. I was like, what about the hit piece on the thing? He's like, man, I don't fucking care. He's like, it doesn't even matter. And it's almost like a sign that you've made it. When it happens, all the other people at that level know that it's just bullshit. Yeah. But it's almost like it's the people who haven't made it who are afraid of it.
Oh, they're angry. They want someone to blame for the reasons that they are where they are, right? That's the biggest thing. I think you asked a question at the start. It's like, why do people think I'm controversial? The same thing. It's like, they want a reason as to why they haven't succeeded. And if someone's an asshole online or someone's this, that, and the other in the media, they point the finger and go, see, that's the reason he's successful, is because he's a scammer. And I'm not. That's why I'm not successful. That's not a reason. Josh said that just before as well. Exactly the same thing. So wrapping up, what are your key bits of advice that you would give to someone who's sitting there right now who's going, I'm not where I want to be financially. I'm not where I want to be in life. What's the key piece of information that you would give to that person to start getting the ball rolling, to start that momentum in the right direction? I think it's priorities, right? Like my priority when I was young and still is now, make money and be successful. So I do things on a daily basis and take actions that resemble the things that I want to do. Not every second of every day do I do that. And sometimes I make decisions based on other things, but 90% of the time it's I do this because I want this outcome. So if someone's like in a shit situation, they're not happy financially, then they need to make priorities like spend less money on shit, start going out less, stop doing X, Y, and Z. I did this post, which was like the 7 deadly sins of poor people. And it was like, the 7 things that they do. And they're the things that people should focus less on. But it really comes down to priority. So if you want to start growing your wealth, you cannot do it without some level of starting capital. So the first thing you need to do is work out, well, how can I save money? How much can I save? And how much do I need to save to be able to buy my first property, for example? Work that out, reverse engineer it, and start saving money. The second thing you need to do is whatever that next thing is. It's all about priority. So for me, when I started my business, started making more money, had more freedom, could do more and more things that I wanted to do, and drinking and partying become a big part of my life. Make money, go out, party, celebrate midweek. And Friday rolls around, Saturday rolls around, Sunday rolls around. And I went through a period of being single there for a while. And then I was like, is this conducive of someone who's going to be ultra successful? Yes or no? Absolutely not. And I had a coach at the time. His name was Jeff Jowett.
I know Jeff.
Yeah, he was my coach at the time. I don't know if he still coaches anymore, but
I don't know him personally, but I know him.
I don't know if he coaches anymore, but he's a good guy. And I said to him, I said, mate, what's one thing I can do next year which will dramatically change my business? Again, it's a priority. I wanted to change my business and grow. And he said, give up the piss. I was like, that it? Yeah. Like, okay, sweet. So I stopped drinking for a 12-month period and my business tripled that year. And I was like, same as I said before, it's like the dog, sit down, give it a treat, it rewards it. I was like, fuck, so if I don't drink, my business triples. That's all I got to do. So that reinforced that behavior of not drinking, which I've then done, every year since. I've tried different sort of, theories around drinking from quarter to quarter, only drinking when I'm overseas and not in Australia, like lots of different things. And I try to work out what works for me. But like not drinking, being fully focused, always immersed in what you do, being on 85 to 90% of the time, that means that you're more productive, more time, less downtime, less distractions, less spending money on shit. That makes you more successful. So like that's how I prioritize. It's like, what do I need to do? What's going to make the biggest impact? And that was the thing. So if you're in that shit situation, it's like, look in the mirror. You're the issue. You're the problem. You're also the solution. That's the amazing thing. And do the things you need to do. And
what about all those people that say, yeah, but what do you do for fun? So
Me?
you cut out the alcohol.
Yep.
You don't go out and party all the
money.
time.
Make money.
I agree with you on
that's
that. Like
fun.
it's way more fun to enjoy life.
Yeah, so I got into running. So I got into running and you start off with doing a half marathon. Half marathon you complete it becomes less fun. You do a marathon. Marathon becomes you do 100 Ks and then I do 100 miles. I got 200 miles soon in Western Australia. So that becomes a big part of your time. You know what it's like growing a business. You don't have a lot of free time to be fun. And business is fun if you love it. Business is only shit when you make no money and it's shit. Business is very fun when you're making moves, hiring people, growing a business, opening new offices and all that type of jazz. And then, from December 1 every single year to New Year's Eve, I stopped drinking on New Year's Eve. I have fun. That definition of fun. I party, I entertain clients, I do whatever I want to do. I go overseas and blow the doors off. And then December 31 comes around, I go sober again and I'm back to sober Jack.
That's awesome.
And work mode.
One piece of advice for the people out there who just need to just get that ball rolling. Like I know we spoke about, like you spoke about the, changing habits and things like that.
Yep.
But if it was just one piece of advice of that person who's just sitting there like, fuck, something's got to change. You said take responsibility for yourself. What's that one quote or the one thing that you just like, this person just needs to hear that?
Yeah, so it's not one quote or it's one piece of advice. Like the thing that makes most people take action, and I mentioned it before about my partner having cancer. No one's healthy until they're forced into being healthy. So like everyone eats shit. I'm one of these people, right? You eat sugar, you don't look after your health, you do blah, 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 until you're told, hey, you got 2 years to live. How quick do you make a change?
Pretty fucking quick.
Instantly. It's exactly the same. If you're in an okay financial situation, you can pay your bills every week, but you haven't got as much money left at the end of the week as you want. Your partner's all right. You don't love them. You don't not love them. They're okay. Like mediocrity is the worst. Like being in the middle is the worst thing. So generally, and this is the unfortunate reality, something really bad needs to happen to that person because that's what will force them into change. Because most people won't make change unless they're forced into it. I just know that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So no one goes and, becomes better looking and fitter and looks after themselves more than when their wife or husband says, hey, I'm leaving, see ya. And they go, fuck, that's a kick in the face. And they have to go find a new partner. So they don't want to be a fat slob. They go and train. They go and be better, So they're like
So true.
pushed into it. Same as health. You're not forced into getting fitter until you're told, hey, if you don't do something, you're going to die. And you're like, oh, okay, I better do something. Financials, no different. It's like if you're in the middle right now, you get sacked tomorrow, something really bad happens and you need to find money. That's generally the push into momentum you need to go and make that happen. And that push for me was like, getting expelled from school, feeling poor, not wanting to be poor. That was my push. Getting hammered by the media, when I mentioned before, that was a push. I was making lots of money. I was like doing okay, nothing really pushing me. Your business drops by 30%, which wipes out 100% of your profit. You go into like stress mode, you either sink or swim. So that was the thing that then launched me. And my business now is, this year, my business will be 8 times bigger than it was 2 years ago.
Fuck, that's awesome.
And that's not because like I'm any better. It's just like I was either forced to make a change and go hard or just go, I'll just be this person for a little while. And I just know that to be true for most people in life. It's like when you get pushed into something and you're forced into it, you make the change.
So that person who's sitting there listening just has to fucking
they're probably
make shit worse.
Well, they're either listening to this, most people, are listening to this and 20 other things. They know what to do. I can tell them time and time again, go do this, go do that. Oh yeah, no worries. Tomorrow comes around and they forget about it. But like something real bad happens and you do the thing.
They're all the messages I get. I've been following you for years. Now I'm broke. I have no money, but I need a coach. I'm like, motherfucker, you should have been here like 3 years ago. We should have had this conversation when you had some money and some time.
It's a weird thing, right? It's obviously psychology or something to do with because we're always trying to find the path of least resistance as humans, right? Like, I don't know about you, but my partner will be like, oh, can you hang the clothes on the line? I'm like, I can't be bothered doing that. And you sit there all day until she says I'm 5 minutes away. And you're like, shh.
Oh yeah, that's me. Jess is laughing because she knows it's
true.
That's exactly,
it's like you're forced. Like shit, if I don't do that, she's going to be very, very unhappy. Or it's like, the school assignment, you got 12 months to complete it. And then like 12 hours before it's due, you're like, fuck, I need to get this done. And like forces you into momentum. I don't know why that is, but it's just an interesting paradigm. The unfortunate reality is most people's lives are not good enough, but not bad enough for change. So
what's it called? The law, the thing that I always talk about, Parkinson's law.
How does that work?
The amount of time and space that's given to achieve a thing is the amount of time and space it takes to achieve the thing.
True, right?
It's like you give yourself 2 hours, you do it in 2 hours. If you give yourself 2 weeks, you do it in 2 weeks.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So if that person who's listening, I hope something really bad happens to you and all of a sudden you're forced into an incredible life.
Fuck, there's a Instagram short right there.
I know.
There's the next front page of the paper. Jack Henderson hopes people die.
Well, I mean, then you got to have the follow-up story 3 years later when that person goes, fuck, I'm so glad. Because that often is what happened.
It is.
What happens, right? It's like there's a saying, the best things in life come badly wrapped. And
I love that. Never heard that.
The best gifts in life, come badly wrapped, right? So most people, I use the example for a divorce. You speak to someone who went through a divorce 5 years after they finished the divorce and they're like, man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Met this new partner and blah, 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 blah. Bankruptcy. All these people who go through bankruptcy, it's like, fuck, it was the depths of their life. And then 5 years later, they're like, oh, I found this new business. And all of a sudden, how many times have you seen someone bankrupt now is worth mega money, right? So again, it's like, I've just seen it happen so many times. So generally something bad needs to happen to push you into momentum to go and do something good.
That's awesome. Love it. Thank you very much for jumping on. I know it was like a last minute thing. But yeah, it's awesome having you on here.
Thanks for accommodating me with no shoes.
No, you're good. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Ta.
Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.